Welcome back, friend. My name is Seth Estrada, and if you're watching this video, you're on my BitTube channel, Mind Your Biz. Feels good to say that. Another great day in BitTube land, where you can make a mistake, or you can say what you feel, you can say the thoughts that are on your mind without fear of being censored. Let's talk about that. But first, let me give a quick shout out to all the subscribers that are on the Mind Your Biz channel on BitTube. Guys, thank you so much. You're the reason I make these videos. And look at us. We've almost gotten to 1,000 subscribers. This is huge. In fact, this is unprecedented. It's never been done on BitTube before, and I appreciate you helping me to take this journey and do so successfully. Guys, you might be saying, Seth, 1,000 subscribers on YouTube really wouldn't be a big deal. In fact, we know that based on ad revenue sharing, the ad revenue sharing model that YouTube promotes for creators, that wouldn't hardly earn you anything. In fact, it would just barely get you into the category of being eligible for YouTube partner status. And you would still have to have an additional, well, many hours of view time as well. Not so on BitTube. It's monetized by default from day one on the airtime system, where the native currency, the tube coin, is shared with you at every single block. Part of the block reward goes to creators like you and like me. So thank you for your support. This means a lot. This is the theme for today's video. We're going to talk about the need for there to be a sort of a distinguishing platform like BitTube in the future. Disclosure, I'm a large stakeholder. However, I'm not a fiduciary. I'm not a part of the headquarters team or the leadership team. I am not currently on retainer as a consultant. I've done some paid coverage for them in the past, but that is no longer the case. It's not my status today. So these views are entirely my own. These are my opinions. This is my view on what we need to do to move forward with cryptocurrency, as well as privacy and censorship-resistant oriented platforms. All right, guys, first off, quick shout out. Hey, Crypto Brekkie, I see you hiding in there. Top of the list there. Appreciate it. Thank you to every single one of you. But first, a word from our sponsors. Shop.mineyour.biz, where you can get mining gear and merchandise. All right, guys, sales pitch over. Let's talk about social media platforms right here. Shout out to Scott Kapner. You, sir, are a gem. Diamond in the rough here. And his article on Medium about reasons that there are no good alternatives to Facebook. Now, I'm going to just go over the bullet points here and not read it word for word, but number one, he says there's an atmosphere of doubt and anxiety around social networks. Investors, investors, they kind of lost interest last year. And that was before there was a lot of scandals surrounding privacy. That's a problem. If there aren't people with lots of money willing to invest that money into development teams and into their dreams, then how can those dreams ever be made a reality? Number two, no one cares about privacy. Unfortunately, that's been proven. Until it's taken away, nobody seems to care about privacy, not being censored, their ability to exercise freedom of expression, even within limits, even within platform dictated limits, having your ideas shut down because they don't match the ideas, the political ideas of the chief editor team or of whoever is doing the censoring on different platforms. Twitter, of course, Facebook, and we'll talk about that in just a minute here, a case study. And then YouTube. We'll talk about that as well. Number three says non-transferable social graphs keep us locked in. Now, what does that mean, non-transferable social graphs? Meaning that the connections that we already have gained on a social media platform such as Facebook, well, we understand how to crawl those social trees, those organization trees. And those charts help keep us oriented in our social life. I know that sounds crazy because 10 years ago, when Facebook hadn't necessarily hit critical mass just yet, when it wasn't into the billion user mark as it is now, we might be thinking, okay, well, I didn't need Facebook. I don't need Facebook now in order to have friends. You're right, you don't need Facebook now. However, if you ever want to go to a high school reunion, if you ever want to meet up with old friends, heck, even coordinate some kind of an extended family reunion, probably the fastest way to do that is on Facebook. There used to be dedicated online services just for finding your old classmates from grade school, from middle school, and from high school. They are largely not used anymore because Facebook is much easier. So these social graphs, they help keep those connections and they help give meaningful suggestions because they have so much data in the aggregate that they can make those connections for us and suggest for us. So this is a question of technology giving us a tremendous amount of convenience, but at the expense of our privacy. Can't have it both ways. Number 4, he says, new platforms often struggle to attract high quality content. And nowhere can I agree with that more than right now. Some air horns. We need quality content. I'm just going to jump back to BitTube right here. Thank you for being subscribed to my channel, where I know what I'm going to release on my channel at the bare minimum will meet the standards that I have for myself. However, if we go to the homepage, we may find that not everything is going to be everyone's cup of tea. And in my mind, a lot of this content is really just kind of regurgitated, and in some cases, just nonsense. It's stock footage with stock photos of models, in some cases lingerie models or swimwear models, with music that has been hashed and rehashed and remixed and basically just dragged through the mud after being borrowed from SoundCloud. Now, that's no fault of BitTube's. This is just what happens in the early phases, early days of a platform like BitTube. There are people who believe, especially with the incentive of airtime, the airtime model of rewarding watch time, that if I put any kind of content that people are willing to sit and watch for about an hour or more, then surely I'll earn more of these rewards. They're not wrong. However, this is not quality content in my mind. It doesn't help anyone to think critically. It doesn't help anyone to change their mind. And it doesn't help anyone to carry on a conversation with an audience. You tell me what you think down in the comments. Is this good content? He goes on to say he conducted a survey of 18 to 35-year-olds on Instagram, what they use social media for. And they said number 1 was connecting with friends. Again, that social graph is hard to beat. Connecting with friends, especially long-lost friends. I have an old friend from high school. He was a friend to me when nobody else would be a friend. We lost touch after high school. The next time that I saw him was 10 years later when I was living in Austin, Texas, and we literally bumped into each other on the street for South by Southwest. I was shocked because I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he didn't go to the 10-year high school reunion. It was actually 12 or 13 years, maybe even longer. It's possible to lose track of people, so connecting with old friends, and really I owe this guy a tremendous debt of gratitude for how good a friend he was to me at that time. And he's expressed the same to me, that we both needed a good friend. And we lost track. Facebook helps with that. And people just kind of understand that that's what it's good for, connecting with friends. And then close second was following creators and discovering new content. So not just following their favorite creators, but discovering new creators that produce good content. Number 5, people are discerning when it comes to investing time in a new platform. So investors are discerning when it comes to investing money in a new platform. They don't want to waste their money because they know there's a chicken and egg problem. Do they have to invest the money before people get interested? Or do people have to get interested and show a user base before those developer teams can say, all right, now we're ready for your money? Which problem do you solve first? Frankly, I think that developers have to be willing to live very, very lean for a very long time. That's a tough one, but for a social media platform, you have to find a way to just tighten your belt and live for longer than the typical tech startup, which is already quite a while, living on your minimum, like your burn rate. Number 6, creating sustainable growth is hard. As I've been watching the BitTube platform go through a bit of kind of hit its stride and go through the knee of the curve and kind of get into a really high growth motion, I have to agree. It's hard to go from a certain amount of user base. And in the first few months, of course, you go to 1 to 2 users, you've grown 200%. You go to 1 to 10 users, you've grown 1,000%. But you get to about a few hundred users, active users, and it gets a little harder. Get past a few thousand, harder still. How do you incentivize people to show up every single day and use your platform versus the competitors? That's a tough one. But when it comes to social media platforms, it's far more tricky than just hosting media, just hosting photos, just hosting videos. If we wanted to just do that, frankly, I could create a static page right now where we could all use an embed code from IPFS media. It wouldn't be that hard. But what would keep people coming back to it? Clearly, there has to be a user experience, an onboarding experience, and then a user base that allows us to interact. That's not an easy thing to do. So creating sustainable growth is hard. And in my mind, it requires there be sort of anchor talent, people who really draw a lot of other people, the Seth Godins of the world, the Tony Robbins of the world. I know it's corny, but the Tony Robbins of the world, the movers and the shakers, the tech giants, people who have an opinion that others care to listen to. Elon Musk, for example, really important guy in terms of his opinion. And then the Joe Rogans of the world. They talk and people listen. They bring interesting acts onto their shows, and they create quality content that people actually want to engage with and create a conversation that brings a lot of people every time. On 7, he says, social media has become an all-out battlefield. Targeted ads, data breaches, and he says they're only the beginning. I think that is probably true. Talks about how it's becoming toxic and it's full of hate. Despite researchers flocking to give direction and expertise, they continually ignore, hesitate, or flat out refuse to take meaningful action. Here's where I fundamentally disagree with the author. Scott, I think, means well here. But I think that when we try too hard to enforce rules onto these platforms, we wind up getting lower engagement. Look at the explosive growth of Reddit. Now, Reddit is not 4chan. Let's be clear. And even though Reddit does have some quirks, it's fairly unfiltered still. It's not entirely unfiltered, but it's mostly unfiltered compared to, say, Facebook and Twitter, where on Reddit, things that most people would characterize as hate speech, and this is not me advocating for it. This is me just saying that it's freedom of expression, letting anybody say what they want, but then warn others that there may be an opinion that they don't agree with. So they've been warned. Reddit does a very good job of this with subreddits. I don't know. Where Reddit has been growing, confidence in platforms like Facebook has been stalling, right? Plummeting. A lot of people are unhappy with Twitter. There's just not a better option yet. And then number 8, he says, new apps struggle to create distinct, meaningful experiences. If it's too novel, it feels unrelatable. He's right. Look at the redesign of MySpace when it came out. If you remember it, scrolled sideways. I know, it's a silly, silly change and kind of a gimmick, but the wrong gimmick, in my opinion, where it just didn't feel right. It always felt weird. And then he says, too similar and it feels unnecessary. Also agreed. If it scrolls up and down the same as everything else with a timeline that feels like everything else and stories that play back with your favorite creators or friends like everything else, then guess what? You're just aping the last 3 social media platforms to come before you. Snapchat ripped off Instagram. Instagram ripped off actually nobody when they first launched. But then Facebook acquired Instagram and ripped off Instagram. And now Instagram and Facebook feel largely the same. What's the difference between all of them? It's really tough to distinguish one from the other now. Certainly a lot more than it was a couple of years ago. Scott, this is endearing. He says social media doesn't need a new business model. It needs a new heart. Maybe it does. But maybe what we need to do is change our heart. I think I'm going to get a little, I'm not totally metaphysical here or completely hippy-dippy. What I am going to say is social media is not going to change as fast as we do. People tend to adapt to technology faster than technology adapts to them for now. Until we get deeper into machine learning and AI that is far more adaptive, we're going to have to make changes on our own. And I suggest that we make changes by adopting platforms that already allow for freedom of speech by default, so that we don't have to censor everything that we say. We can just get used to new user interfaces, new ways of interacting with each other. That's what I think. Here's a couple of case studies. Omar Bam, banned from Facebook almost half a year ago, but I like talking about it because this is relevant. Crypto's news is phenomenal. They do great work and they have for a long time. So for their Facebook group to be completely banned, not cool. I'm a member of his new Facebook group, but it's struggling to get past the 1,000 member mark and into the 2,000 or 4,000 or tens of thousands member mark, as it should be. How long will it take? Who knows? Could be that Facebook is suppressing their ability to grow. And then Mouse, YouTube, this happened some months ago, and then recorded live a change that YouTube made. Now, it's always possible that Curious Droid, there we go, so that changed real time in front of him using a smartphone to record it. It's very possible that Curious Droid has their account listed as being in another language, and that the moment that Mouse made a comment that it was being run through a double translator, this results in what's called transliteration. Or if you ever run a phrase in English that you want to translate to another language, into that language and then back to English, winds up being a little bit strange. Have you ever noticed that? How there's not always a perfect one-to-one comparison for phrases, especially that we want to use in English. It's always possible that this was the case for Tough Later Mouse's comment, and that YouTube just kind of did some fancy translation work in the background. I mean, let's face it, they own Google Translate. They own a lot of web properties. They own a lot of intellectual property that could have created this change. However, the fact that it happened in comments and changed it so substantially, again, definitely from an era when atomic power was the solution for everything, and changed it to, this would definitely be a solution for everything. Went from making an observation of culture from the past to now proposing that this would be a solution. It substantially changes, completely, fundamentally changes the nature of that comment. That is disconcerting, because if YouTube can use AI or machine learning to fundamentally change the nature of comments that we make to suit their political worldview, oh boy, we're in trouble then. And I just don't agree with that. All right, so guys, that's what I have for you today. I think that we do need a new social media platform. You've heard me talk about it on other interviews. Thank you again to Ken Bosak for having me on his show recently. And thank you again to Steve McGarry for having me on Hack Crypto. Appreciate you reaching out to fellow creators to do collaborations. But I'm with Scott. I am losing trust as well in Facebook and in other similar platforms. That's why you see this posted first to BitTube and then potentially also to YouTube. And that's why you see it then reposted in link format to other places. All right, guys, that's what I got for you today. Thanks again to our sponsor for the day, shop.mineyour.biz, where we have merch and mining gear to keep you mining and in the profit, in the black during this crypto winter. And BitTube. BitTube. Where do we go from here? I think we need better content. I think we need you on this platform. Thanks so much for watching this all the way to the end. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button to get us all the way to 1,000 subscribers. Guys, together we can do it. I know we can. You're the reason I make these videos. I love your face, and I will see you in the next one.